The first letter looked like a joke. Big red stamp across the top. Violation notice. Apparently, the HOA decided I owed hundreds in fines. For hunting. On my own land. Land my grandfather bought before most of these houses even existed. They claimed it was against community standards and disruptive to the neighborhood's peaceful image. I couldn't believe it. This was the same forest my father taught me to track deer in, the same ridgeline we'd camped on as kids. And now, a handful of board members in polos and clipboards thought they could erase generations of tradition with a fine. But here's the thing. While they were busy policing me, they forgot about the trail they loved so much. Every weekend, those same HOA members hiked it like they owned it, bragging about their exclusive access. Only problem was, they didn't own it at all. I looked into the deed. And when I found out the land was for sale, I didn't hesitate. I bought it. Outright. The next morning, fresh signs went up. Private property. No trespassing. The HOA thought they could control me with penalties and threats. They had no idea I was about to take away the one thing they cared about most. Before we go on, hit subscribe, so stories like this reach you first. I'd lived on this stretch of land my whole life. My grandfather bought it in the 1950s, long before any of the cookie-cutter homes popped up. Back then, it was just rolling woods, streams, and a ridge where we hunted deer every fall. The hunting cabin still stood there, weathered and strong, its walls lined with racks and photographs of generations who'd walked these same trails with rifles slung over their shoulders. Then came the developers. They bought up farmland nearby, paved over meadows, and built luxury homes with vinyl siding and postage stamp lawns. And with the houses came something worse, the HOA. A small group of self-appointed rule makers who thought their bylaws extended beyond their sidewalks and manicured hedges. At first, they left me alone. They didn't like the sound of gunshots in the distance, but there wasn't much they could do. Until the day one of their new homeowners saw me dragging out a buck and decided to report me. A week later, that fine showed up. I called their office, thinking it was a mistake. The woman on the line was curt. Hunting violates the HOA's standards. You'll need to remit payment within 10 business days. I reminded her my land wasn't part of their association. Her reply, all land visible from HOA property is subject to our code. That's when I realized what I was up against. They thought their little rulebook could overwrite state law, private deeds, and 70 years of family tradition. They wanted to make an example out of me to prove no one was beyond their control. But they didn't know me. I wasn't just some neighbor they could bully into submission. While they were busy writing violation slips, I was studying the trail system they loved to use, the one cutting through forest they didn't own. When the listing popped up for sale, I made one call to the agent, signed the papers, and in less than a week, that land was mine. And with a few metal signs and a heavy-duty chain across the trailhead, the game changed. The HOA had fined me for hunting. I had just shut down their favorite hiking trail, permanently. The first Saturday after I put up the signs, it happened. I was sipping coffee on my porch when I saw them, 3 HOA board members in matching windbreakers, marching toward the trailhead with their hiking sticks like generals leading an army. They stopped dead when they reached the chain across the path. The fresh private property, no trespassing signs gleamed in the morning sun. From where I sat, I could hear them. This has to be illegal. He can't just block public access. Call Karen. She'll know what to do. Of course, Karen was their president, sharp haircut, sharper tongue, and the loudest voice at every HOA meeting. Sure enough, by noon, her silver SUV came tearing down the gravel road and parked in front of my gate. She stomped out, heels clicking against the dirt, holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. "You can't do this!" she barked. The trail has been used by residents for years. It's part of our community amenities. I didn't even stand up. It was never yours to begin with. The land's mine now. Check the county records if you don't believe me. Her face twisted like I'd slapped her. This is harassment. You're retaliating because of your hunting violations. I laughed. Violations? Lady, you fined me for hunting on my own property. Now you can hike on your own lawns. The board members behind her shuffled uncomfortably. They weren't used to seeing their queen bee challenged. Over the next week, the HOA launched a full-scale assault. Letters stuffed in my mailbox threatening lawsuits. Phone calls demanding I take down the signs. They even sent a group of residents to protest at the trail entrance, waving handmade posters that read, "Give us our trail back." But the law was on my side. I owned every inch of that land, fair and square. And the more they screamed, the clearer it became to the rest of the neighborhood that this wasn't about community. It was about control. Then came the kicker. One evening, I caught two men trying to slip past the chain, bolt cutters in hand. They didn't get far. Game cameras I'd set up along the trail caught everything. I sent the footage straight to the sheriff's department. The next morning, Karen was fuming outside my driveway again. Only this time, she wasn't barking orders. She was red-faced, spitting mad, because deputies had shown up at her door with a warning, step foot on my land again, and charges would follow. For the first time, the HOA wasn't in control, and I could see it in her eyes. Karen wasn't going to let this go quietly. She was plotting her next move, and I had a feeling it would get ugly. Karen's war reached its breaking point one late Saturday afternoon. I was out by the trailhead checking the chain when I heard engines roaring. Within minutes, a caravan of HOA members pulled up, SUVs, minivans, even golf carts. At least 24 people spilled out, led by Karen herself, megaphone in hand. "This land belongs to the community," she shouted, her voice amplified through the trees. "We will not be denied access to what is rightfully ours." The crowd cheered like she was some kind of folk hero. Signs waved in the air, "Stop the hunter! Save our trail!" I crossed my arms and stood at the gate. "It doesn't belong to you," I said, calm as ever. "I bought it." "You're trespassing. Leave now before I call the sheriff." Karen sneered, raising a bolt cutter high like it was a victory sword. "We don't need your permission." And with that, she lunged for the chain. But she wasn't ready for what happened next. The second the blades clamped down, floodlights burst on. Sirens wailed. Sheriff's deputies emerged from the tree line, flanking the crowd with flashlights and hands resting on holsters. I'd called them hours earlier, warning them the HOA was planning something big. The look on Karen's face was priceless, caught red-handed. Bolt cutters dangling from her grip, with a crowd of neighbors suddenly realizing they were in way over their heads. "Ma'am," a deputy said firmly, "step away from the property. That chain isn't community property, it's a legal boundary. What you're attempting here is criminal trespassing and destruction of private property." Karen sputtered, trying to rally the crowd. "This is harassment. He's ruining our neighborhood." But no one backed her up. The same neighbors who'd cheered seconds ago were now backing away, murmuring nervously. No one wanted their name in a police report. The deputies escorted Karen to her SUV while issuing citations to the ringleaders. The rest scattered like spooked deer. I stayed silent the whole time, arms folded, letting the law speak louder than any words I could have said. When the last car pulled away and the woods went quiet again, I finally let myself smile. The trail was mine. My rights were intact, and the HOA's little rebellion had just collapsed in front of half the neighborhood. It wasn't just about hunting anymore, it was about principle. And they'd just learned that when you push a landowner too far, sometimes the land pushes back. After the deputies broke up Karen's little crusade, things in the neighborhood shifted almost overnight. The HOA, once loud and intimidating, suddenly went quiet. No more letters stuffed into my mailbox, no more phone calls about violations. Their bluff had been called, and they knew it. Even the board members who had once strutted around the neighborhood in matching jackets now avoided eye contact when they drove by my property. Neighbors started approaching me privately, too. Some apologized. Others admitted they'd been pressured into joining Karen's protests, afraid of fines or harassment if they refused. A few even thanked me for standing up to her, saying it gave them the courage to push back on their own ridiculous citations. Word spread fast. The trail was closed for good. I put up stronger gates, reinforced chains, and posted updated signs. Hikers, joggers, and HOA nature lovers had to find somewhere else to parade around. For the first time in years, the forest around my land was quiet, just the sound of birds, rustling leaves, and the occasional snap of a deer moving through the brush. As for Karen, her downfall came swiftly. The sheriff's department handed over reports to the county attorney, and suddenly she was facing charges for trespassing and property damage. The HOA board voted to remove her as president to avoid further embarrassment. Without her constant meddling, the group fractured into silence, too scared to keep pushing their luck. I kept on hunting, just as my grandfather had. Every fall, I dragged deer out of the woods, walked past the same ridge line, and cooked venison in the same cabin we'd always used. Only now I did it with a smile, knowing no one could touch me or my land again. The irony wasn't lost on me. They fined me for hunting, thinking they could shame me into bending to their rules. Instead, I bought their favorite land and shut down their precious trail. The HOA had tried to control me, but in the end it was me who controlled them. And the next time I fired a shot that echoed across the valley, I hoped Karen could still hear it from her living room, a reminder that she'd lost and I had won.